Hey, 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 hey.
Should we get started?
Do we want to get started? Okay, let's go. Do you want to do the intro blurb, Rob?
Sure.
I suck at doing this. Thank you.
Yeah, by being here, everyone agrees to the membership agreement, participation and contribution guidelines, and code of conduct. Also, meetings are published to YouTube, and we may use LLM AI summary tools. And for introductions, I am Rob from First Dibs.
I am Martin from Apollo.
Hey folks, Benji from GraphQL.
Um, so looking at the agenda, ready for review agenda items. Don't see anything there. Grants available for key initiatives.
I have an update here actually. The blog post was released yesterday for the call for projects. Uh, yeah, I can share it in chat. I think actually it was also sent on socials. Yep, just posted on socials. So if you know anyone that is a good candidate for grants, feel free to direct them toward that blog post.
Okay, is that it for grants?
I think that's it.
Okay, you want to start on GraphQL over HTTP?
Yes. Okay, so a bunch of stuff. I kept the easy stuff for the end of the day, and I removed the hard stuff. So first one is basically an editorial change. Let me remind me about this. Yeah, it's about when you do HTTP request using GET, you should not do mutations because it's against all HTTP best practices. Like if it's a GET, it should be idempotent. Okay, let me share also the link in chat. I'm looking at 378 here. So it's very important. It's an important thing. And currently it's displayed after the example. So when I skimmed through the spec, I somewhat missed it. And I find it's looking better above the examples. I also understand why it's like this because the examples are related to the section just above. So no strong feeling about this one. Just a suggestion, and I was curious if anyone had yeah, any feedback about it.
Yeah, that definitely shouldn't be under the heading example if it is a normative requirement. Um, so if it doesn't say that elsewhere in the text, and from a quick scan I don't see it, then yeah, that's absolutely the right fix, and we should merge that. That is a trivial editorial change. Yeah,
Should I,
I'm gonna slap and approve on that right now. Done.
Yep, I did the same.
should I merge?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, let's go. What else? Other inline is 37777. A bunch of things here. So this one is a bit more involved. It touches a bit more things. The main thing is if you do a post, HTTP post, you're sending the request and all the parameters over JSON. And we have this language that if, in order to be compatible, if you send null, for an example, for variables, it's the same as sending empty variables, for an example. Which does not make sense for get because we are not sending JSON, and I don't think we should send null in variables for get. So this pull request clarifies this a little bit. I think it also affects the get, yeah, for get, empty string is the equivalent of null, and which is the same as absent. And it also factors in the ignore unknown request parameters to keep, to preserve option value. If we decide to add new root properties to the request someday, we should really, we must ignore unknown parameters, whether it's get or post request. And I think right now the sentence is only in post request.
Could you split that change up? I think the latter one that you said is pretty obvious that we should merge it. And that's sensible on its own. The other one, I'm just gonna go through the git blame a bit to try and remind myself of why it was there. But I believe that this was something that some clients and or servers were doing. And so we wanted to allow for that. Because it's like fairly harmless. I agree, though, with regard to it not making sense for get. So I'm gonna go through and see if I can find out if there was a reason for that. It might be again that is something that some clients were doing and accepting it as relatively harmless. Um,
Yeah. You mean sending null in a GET request, like variables equals null, something like
yeah, I have
this?
a vague feeling there might be something like that, but
Hmm.
let me have a quick scan through the blame. If I can find the
Okay,
pull request that introduced it, then it might remind me what the deal was.
sounds good. I'll split this into three different pairs, and then we can discuss on the individual pairs. And the last one is 376, which is there's no language about what version of HTTP we should or should not support. So this pull request, what does it do? Yeah, it requires that it's explicit that a server must support either HTTP 1 or 2, like one version of HTTP. I think I added this one. Yeah, I remember now. I added this one because if you look at the current spec, GraphQL over HTTP, we do quote a RFC. Let me share my screen. Over HTTP. So if you look for stuff like header, for an example, yeah, we quote for all the HTTP nouns or definitions, we quote RFC 7231. And if you go to RFC 7231, it says HTTP 1.1 in bold in the title, which is probably fine. It's just the semantics and content, but still, it was a bit like confusing at first. So I thought like maybe being explicit about it would be better. Like a server can support HTTP 1 or 2. It just has to support one version.
Um, this specifically relates to the accept header, if I'm remembering correctly, doesn't it?
So we link to RFC 7231 for a bunch of things. So except header, but also content type, I think. It's in a few places. Content type. We also say a server must comply with RFC 7231. I guess the underlying question is like, what is a HTTP header? Like, where is this defined? In the context of a specific version of HTTP, it's easy to define, but we have this generic version of it. And the closest thing is RFC 7231, but also this RFC says HTTP 1.1. So I guess you can reuse the concept in HTTP 2, but it doesn't harm, in my opinion, to be explicit that we can support HTTP 2.
I would recommend if you want to include a change like this, I would recommend changing the text for the accept to say as specified in blah and later extended in the other one, because I think that the accept is going to be the same for both. Um, and we want you to support the older one generally. Even if you're using like HTTP 2 plus, whatever, the accept header still follow the old rules. Same goes for the content type in 5.4. In 6, that is definitely an issue where it just says a server must comply with RFC 7231. You're right, that is a problem. We do not want that because that is the full yeah, that's the full semantics of the HTTP 1.1. And there are semantics in there that 2 plus don't do. For example, what's it called? Where you do like a streamed response body where you don't give it like a content length that works in a different way in HTTP 2 plus. Um, content type chunked, something like that.
Chunk, yeah,
Content encoding
chunking coding.
chunked. Yeah, that one. So Yeah, so it wouldn't make sense to do that over HTTP2. So I think we should definitely remove that paragraph from the beginning of 6. Um, there's also references in the other resources, which I think we're fine to keep because that's just sort of saying here's some general stuff about security. And it's a bunch of stuff that like may talk about HTTP security. So I think that's fine. And you can also add the other RFC to that list as well. Let me have a look at your actual changes that you've proposed. Oh my word, so many tabs open right now.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I think in addition to the change that you've got here where we talk about the HTTP protocol, we should definitely remove that sentence from section 6, right near the top.
Taking notes at the same time. Um,
You by giving this an H1, which you've done, you've effectively made this a new top level section to the whole specification and renumbered all of the sections. I'm not sure that we necessarily want to do that. I think it belongs under overview. Um, so I would indent it to an H2, I think.
Sounds good. Okay, I can do that for next primary working group in 2 weeks. And for the other stuff, my brain is completely too fried, so I haven't had the time to. Did you wanted to say something about HTTP 1, Benji? I see you
I,
unmuted.
Sorry, I'm still reading through the actual changes.
Okay.
I feel like the a server must support at least one version of the HTTP message format. It kind of feels a bit yeah, kind of a little redundant. Because like it's an HTTP spec, so like of course you have to implement some
Yeah.
version of HTTP. Uh, I'm worried that giving examples of that, like HTTP 1.1, HTTP 2, will just mean that we become dated and have to keep those up to date with the latest links to them. So I would probably just trim that sentence at the comma and just go a server must support at least one version of the HTTP message format
Mm.
as, or maybe as specified by the IETF or something like that and leave it there. So you can then look up whatever the latest specs are from the IETF regarding HTTP.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out whether we want to make it so that 1.1 is required or not. But I don't think it really needs to.
Yeah, 2.0 everywhere. I don't think we need to prevent people to ship a 2.0 only server.
Yeah, normally servers can implement both. But yeah. I think you can delete the may support several versions to for wider compatibility because you say it must support at least one. That already implies that you can support more than one. So I think we can trim that as well, just in the interests of simplicity. Um, on line 128, you've got. Oh, okay. No, that's fine. You're using terms. Yeah, that's fine. Should we be wrapping those in spec MD formatting? Should we be doing that? Okay, yes, we should. And in fact, if you're using those terms, um, you can do it with the specmd. Uh, sorry, this is a thing I know exists, but have to remind myself every time. In the metadata JSON, I'm going to send you this link over the chat. There's a biblio section, and that basically means whenever you see a defined term used in the document, it becomes a hyperlink to the underlying sections of another spec. So you can actually make those be links wherever they're referenced, if it makes sense to do so. Um, I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying that's a feature that exists, um, and it may be better than just referencing it all the time. But yeah, cool. Okay, sorry. Anyway, move on.
Yeah, that's all I had for HTTP, GraphQL over HTTP. The other big item is Appendix A and application.json, slash JSON, sorry. I still believe there's a way, like maybe in between. Like I get your point that simple server are good, but I really don't want. I mean, I want an upgrade path. Like I don't want in 10 years that we have both to maintain application slash JSON and the new one like in all code for all clients and servers. So I don't know. I will spend some time with it and think about something.
Okay. I personally don't really see that as being a big deal. Like a server that supports the old form is so incredibly trivial. Like it's so little code. If you already implement the new system, implementing the old one is just basically drop the status codes from it and return application JSON. Like it's really that simple. You've already got all the code that does the main stuff. So I I'm really not convinced that that is actually a legacy maintenance burden. Um, if it's a cognitive overhead burden from the spec, then we can look at like reformatting the spec, which was what originally I was interested in this idea of it being an appendix, but like it doesn't make sense to be an appendix if it's required, but we could make it a different chapter.
Mm. Yep. Let's iterate on this. I think I've scheduled a meeting next week actually, if I did my homework. GraphQL over HTTP, so that would be good. On the 23rd, working group agendas 2026. Well,
Yeah, I'm not available next week. I've got parents' evening at school.
okay. And it's a good deadline for me anyways, to work on this. And we can circle back during primary working group, hopefully with a bigger crowd. All I have for
Want to
GraphQL
move
over
on to
HTTP.
can I use?
Yes, I want to show you my CSS skills. It's beautiful. So this is what I've been toying with in the past couple of days. I don't know when we started thinking about that, but as GraphQL has more and more features, we're adding to GraphQL, and we have experimental stuff. So it's becoming hard to see what you can use where. So I wrote this small tool that is currently on my GitHub. And that contains all the data. Currently, the only project which is completely built is Apollo Kotlin. It's also the very beginning, like in terms of features, I put the one that came to mind, but I'm sure we have a bunch of other things. But it's showing something. You can link to a specific project if you want to. So you have deep links. So it's easy to share if you work on fragment arguments, for an example. You can go to fragment arguments, and you can see that GraphQL JS supports it, Apollo Kotlin, and the others maybe, but we don't really know. But hopefully someday we will know. So that's it. If you want to contribute, pull requests are very welcome. And I will continue improving this over the next weeks, I guess, something like this.
This is interesting. One issue that you might face here is that like the list of projects is going to become huge if we support everything. If you look in like the tooling section of the GraphQL
Yeah,
website, there is a lot. So I think it would be wise to make this scalable. It might make sense to make it more like are you familiar with npmstats.com? Um,
yeah,
it's basically a way of like comparing different softwares on NPM. But you could do something like that where you can like say, I want to see which of these like two servers or whatever makes sense. Another thing to keep in mind for this, I was just looking at what you had on your screen and it seemed like everything was rated out of like 10 or whatever. But obviously the features that might be supported by a server versus a client versus a piece of tooling like GraphQL Code Gen are different. So it wouldn't make sense to like analyze them all using the same out of rating.
oh, I have a trick for that. uh, I have a not applicable version. Like if a feature is not applicable for you, you can say NA in your supported version, and then for the purpose of the scoring, it gives you all green, all pass things. So for an example, what do I have here? A GraphQL code generator, you see it's currently listed at 1 out of 10 because we have 10 features. And it says today it supports 1, but it's just because I looked at all the GraphQL response plus JSON stuff and I put it as NA. So I agree it's not perfect, but at least it does not downgrade the projects.
Okay, interesting. I think what I would do, well, yeah, okay.
Uh,
I think that's a reasonable way. The way that I considered doing it was essentially by categorizing. So obviously this is
yeah,
coming from like the golden path style. You're a server or you're a client or you're a code generator or you're a whatever. And then we should know for each feature which things they apply to. And
yeah,
one of the advantages of doing that is each time you add a new feature, you don't immediately decrease the compatibility of every piece of software. Um,
yeah.
I am concerned that this kind of presentation may make it look like most people don't implement most things when it's just a case of like having to maintain another website. Um, yeah. I like the idea, but I'm a little bit worried about the interpretation that people will give to like this. This makes GraphQL ecosystem at the moment look not ideal.
Yep,
And we're
definitely.
putting a lot of burden on all of the different library maintainers to like come on here and make sure that they're keeping this table up to date, not only maintaining their own projects as well.
Yeah. I will probably work over the next few days to improve the data. Like I've done it for Apollo Kotlin. I probably will do it for the others, like at least so that we have a good seed. I don't want to ask everyone to update this. But in the long run, yeah, it's I cannot commit to do this in the long run.
Yeah, and every time we add a new feature to GraphQL, we have to reach out to what, like 200 projects to say, hey,
Yeah,
update whether you're compatible or not
yeah,
is a bit much. So I think if you do it less as a comparison and or the other thing is oh yeah, hang on. What am I thinking? Can we do it as something where it's actually gathered from the projects themselves? So they just need to keep like a particular JSON file up to date. Like, for example, service capabilities style, like not service capabilities, but that kind of thing where you sort of say, here are the things that my library implements. That would also be good for the golden path. So like if we can use the same kind of thing for both, because we'd like to say, for example, I'd like Apollo client to be able to say, hey, yeah, we follow these like 7 golden path rules, and then you can say how many of them should it implement and like which ones does it kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
think that this problem that you have here is the same problem that we're going to have for Golden Path, and we need to solve well for both. So I'm really glad that you've like taken it on and you have like this first version. But I think presentation of it needs to be done cautiously.
Yep. So I've been thinking about categories as well, but the thing is, it becomes a bit blurry sometimes. I don't have examples in mind, but what is a server? Is Graz a server? Probably not, because the server is GraphQL Yoga. But how do you define Graz? And you may end up with a lot of categories, but definitely something worth investigating.
Hmm. I
Most of
wonder
those
whether
features are
the
also
go on.
Sorry, Rob.
most of those features are also experimental, isn't like they're not in the spec,
Oh yeah,
right?
that's the whole point. Like the whole point is trying to move experimental features before they go into the spec. Like the only one that is actually in the spec is one-off. So if you look and fragment description, sorry, fragments and operation description. So we have 2 features that are actually in the spec. But I think it's fine to put, and it's good to have experimental status there. Like fragment arguments, for an example, like people can use it, and defer should be in the list.
Yeah, I agree. But just for the presentation of, if it was that bar chart type of thing, if it was only for spec things, I think it makes sense. But to include experimental stuff, like, yeah, I wouldn't like count against something for not implementing something that's still experimental. But once it is in the spec, it'd be nice to see that type of chart to use
Yeah,
to support all the features of the spec.
Yeah, and specifically once it's landed in the draft, I think as well, rather than the latest published spec, I think
Yeah.
encouraging people to do things that are in the draft is wise. Um, have you, Martin, have you dealt with the issue of, for example, like incremental delivery, where people have implemented like the 2023 version, but not the latest version or whatever?
yeah. So there is a note, so you can add something in the note, but it's free form. There's no structured data for it
Okay, yeah,
because
that's
it's the
reasonable.
same issue. Like if we want to make this structured, it's becoming really complicated.
Well, I think the way that Can I Use itself deals with this problem is it just gives you different uh rows essentially. Like it's got a
Mm,
feature which is incremental delivery, 2022, and then another one that's incremental delivery
yeah.
2026. But obviously
Yes.
you don't want to rate someone poorly if they don't support the 2022 because it's like, it's deprecated now. Like
Yeah.
it's not the one we're going to go with.
Yeah.
Fun, interesting project.
Yeah, really
That
fun.
was fun to do. Yep. I learned a lot of CSS doing it.
Hmm.
All right, cool. Thanks. I think that's all I have for this. Yep. The first stream is
Yeah.
next.
Are you guys up for spending a little bit of time reviewing the latest spec PR that I have of the validation section? So the one that we did the last few months was the response section that has been merged to the integration branch now, and this is the next chunk. This one, I hope it's not defining any terms, just spec algorithms. We have discussed all of these validation rules over the years, but yeah, so this is it in spec form. Do you want to take 15 minutes to take a look and then we'll regroup?
Yeah, let's do that. In the meantime, let me pose a question to you, and Rob, maybe you can have a look through that since you're already familiar with these things. Um, so this is completely different subject. Um, we try generally to manage the permissions in the GraphQL organization on GitHub via Teams. And whilst adding Trevor as the maintainer, I added him to the maintainers team thinking that would give him all the relevant permissions. It does not. There's quite a few people on the maintainer team, but the maintainer team actually only has triage permissions. Um, and so I was wondering how it worked. And as I went through, I found that actually there's a lot of people who've been directly added to the graphical repo. Um, Many with like all different types of access: admin, maintain, write, triage. And generally, we try not to do that. So I think what I'm proposing is that we just remove anyone who hasn't like done a commit in the last year and move over to the new system. We can always add them back in, but I would rather not have them as individuals added to the project, but instead have them in the teams. Um, so if you'd like to take a few minutes to look through it, I'll put the team link in the chat. Um, but yeah, I've renamed the group to graphical triage, but I might change it back again afterwards. So this is the team. And then if you go to GraphQL, graphical, settings, collaborators, and then here you'll see that quite a lot of people have been added with like direct access to the repository, which I think we should resolve. Anyway, I'll start reading through the validation rules.
Do people receive a notification when we remove them? Like this is always a question.
I don't know that they do. I don't think so.
If they don't and they haven't committed in 1 year, I think we should clean up this list.
Yeah, that's my thought as well, especially with like admin privileges. Like we don't
Yeah.
need to have admins hanging around for too long. There's always a risk.
Yep.
One of the things that I'm in the process of doing as well is I'm trying to make it so that the graphical repo can be published via the OIDC stuff. So basically, merging a pull request should be all that's necessary to then ship the latest version of graphical. But what that then means is anyone who has merge pull request permissions can theoretically then ship a version of graphical. So if their account was to be hijacked, they can push code to main, wait for it to pass CI, and then merge another pull request, and that's it. It's shipped to npm. So we want to have as few people with those permissions as possible. It's good that the token itself can't be leaked anymore, though, with this system, which is the risk that the current system has. Is there's an actual token which could be stolen and then used maliciously without the CI checks, without the transparency. Rob, remind me, does the stream directive require a static argument or can it be dynamic? Can it be a variable?
Which argument?
Initial count label.
It can be a variable.
Okay, cool.
We did discuss that at some point, and I think like a responsive UI, maybe you want a different initial count based on screen size, something like that.
Okay.
So I'll check in at 20 after and see if we want more time or yep. Should we give it another 5 minutes?
Whilst editing this, I am noticing quite a few inconsistencies in the spec, as I always do. I need to I need to get some more editorial edits into the main spec itself.
I'll check in again at half past the hour.
Sounds good. Rob, are you there?
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to tidy up the stream and defer directives are used on valid root field, and I'm struggling with the parent type of the directive, primarily because I'm thinking of ways that people can mess this up. And one of the things that you can do is you can assign implements to any object type, including the root object type. So, for example, you can say that query implements node. That's a perfectly legitimate thing to do, and does exist in some schemas. So, technically, you can also do, for example, mutation implements foo, whatever. What this means is that you can have a selection set on the mutation type that is like a named fragment dot 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 on foo, which is actually the mutation type that you're spreading it on, but you're doing it through one of its interfaces that it implements. So the rule as it currently stands doesn't doesn't quite cover everything. Um, but further from that, the I think that you should split this into two rules, a defer rule and a stream rule, because defer applies to fields. Stream applies to fields, whereas defer applies to fragments. And so the logic in them is going to be a little bit different. And I think I would also possibly do it from the other direction. Um, well, no, it's probably fine in the direction it is, but yeah. So I want to be able to say, for example, for each stream directive in the document, let the field be the field to which the directive is applied. The parent type of field must not be the mutation root object type or the subscription root object. Yeah, that. Um, subscription, which is really straightforward for the stream type, but the deferred type is like more complicated to define. This is my concern.
Okay. I'm looking at the GraphQL JS code, and it was very convenient to do it the way that it is now because there's a get parent type function that works for both, regardless if it's a fragment or a field.
That's handy.
Yeah, but I see what you're saying, how it could be an interface on the root type field.
Yeah, I mean, if it was, you're really doing wacky things. But like I feel like we should have a rule in the spec that just forbids interfaces on the mutation and subscription type. Because I'm not sure how they would be useful. The query type is more useful. We also don't have any rule in the spec as it currently stands that forbids you using the mutation or subscription type within a query, um, like referencing it from within the query type in like a nested position, which again, I think we should have in the spec. We don't have those restrictions currently. So like if need be, let's that might simplify this is if we kind of push those rules through as a separate like earlier thing saying let's push these into the spec and see what happens, see if it breaks anything, see if anyone complains, because I it doesn't feel worth the effort of guarding against it if no one does it in the first place. So if no one does it, let's just put a rule in there just saying no one does this, and then we don't need that subtlety to be represented in these rules, and then you can just say the parent type of the fragment and you're done.
Yeah. I was thinking about the other case that you said where you have in your query an object type that has a field that is the mutation type. And it just seemed like if you were doing that, that seems pretty wacky too. But if you were doing that and it gets caught by this rule, that seemed like not terrible. Like I don't think we would need to go out of our way to allow that. And if it ever was a problem, then we could loosen it.
Sorry,
But
I think I missed a small part of that, and I lost what the rule was that you were referencing. Say it again.
the other example that you gave, so this is just checking that you're not using defer stream on the root mutation or subscription type. And in theory, you probably could have an object type in your schema somewhere that has a field, and that field's type is the mutation type. It's not at the top level. Do we
Oh,
guard against
right,
that?
yes. So I wasn't saying that we should guard against that in this in the incremental delivery work. I was just saying we should do it in the spec in general.
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't think any sensible schema is doing that. I think it's quite common to reference the query type within
yeah,
mutation. But I think it's vanishingly rare to reference, for example, the subscription type within query or within mutation, or the mutation type within query should also like effectively be forbidden by the spec anyway, because it says that you can't have side effects. But we don't specifically have a rule for it, and I think we should. But
right.
that's, as I say, that is a completely like I want to say independent. That is a change that we can put into the spec before incremental delivery, and then we can build on it in the incremental delivery stuff because we now won't need to forbid certain other weird and wacky things. Like I'd really love to just rule out the fact that like mutation could implement interfaces. Like Should
Right,
it be
right.
able to? It doesn't make sense. Like why would the mutation root type should only ever be used at the root of an operation? So it literally we should add that as a rule, and then it just doesn't. I can't think of a possible use case where it would make sense to give the mutation type an interface. So if we just rule against it, then the parent type that you're saying here would make sense and would be fine. So I think we should just push that through as another change.
Okay, yeah. So totally agree with that. But to make the argument that it's not even necessary to do that for this, like let's say someone was doing that and they wanted to defer that mutation type inside of their query, they're going to hit this rule. And I'm going to argue and say that that's still fine. And
So
even if like we just,
the issue at the moment is they wouldn't hit the rule, right? If they were doing it like on foo, it wouldn't fire this rule, so their query would technically be valid, and then when we fix it later, it would become invalid. Um, but
well, I
if
mean,
we
if
add
you're
a
writing
rule,
something that's
yeah.
like you're writing a query and you're pulling a field in that query and the output type of that field is the root mutation type, you would hit this rule because it's just checking that
Oh yeah,
it's
sorry. Yeah, I was thinking of the mutation where you have a mutation that has a foo interface, and you're talking instead about a query that references mutation. Yeah, I understand. Yes, I agree.
okay. But we do need to fix the other one because that would be a way of bypassing the rule. And one way would be, as you said, to add a new validation rule that prevents um, interfaces and unions, maybe? Or is that no?
I think it's a really simple schema validation rule, which just says, I think we would say these things. The mutation root operation type may not be referenced by any field or may not be referenced in any position, essentially, other than like being the root operation type. And it must not implement any interfaces. Yeah, you wouldn't use those exact words, but that's essentially what I mean. It can't be the return type of a field. It can't be a member of a union. It can't have any interfaces. It can only be the root mutation type. The same would go for subscription. The same would not go for query.
Right.
And I think that would just get rid of a lot of issues. Um, I mean, I would love to say that the root subscription type shouldn't even allow fragment spreads because you're only allowed one field in the root subscription type anyway, which is a change that we did manage to get through. That was like because you were allowed, or there was some ambiguity around introspection fields, like under type name
Yeah, I remember
at one
that.
point. But yeah, like just the act of having a fragment spread on subscription itself, in my opinion, doesn't make sense. Like when would that ever be useful?
That's why I didn't write this validation rule going in the other direction, where you start at the top and then look for, because you
Yeah,
have to traverse all the fragments that may be there.
yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I'm
Um,
kind of scared to add that type of validation rule because it would be a breaking change, even though it's not rare, but even though it's probably rare, but I don't know, maybe I could just check for the interface case in this one.
I would love to, yeah. I mean, if you can do that easily, then well, no, you can't say you're not allowed to defer on a abstract fragment type. So yeah, I don't know how you would address that in this. Um, Also, I think that I would love to see an example anywhere of someone who has used interfaces on mutation and subscription to just know why they would have done that.
Yeah. Okay. I'll
Because
I'll take a look and figure out something.
Sounds good. I think blocking that in future GraphQL anyway, like especially if no one's using it yet, let's block it now. We can always unblock it in the future.
Yeah,
But otherwise, this isn't the only thing that's ever going to hit that concern. And if we can just
right.
rule it out, it's going to make life a lot easier for us going forwards, I think.
Okay.
I had one question, Rob,
Yeah.
um, about differ in subscriptions. Like you still allow to use differ if there is an if. Like, is that something you've seen people do? Like thinking for as someone who is going to implement the validation rule, like it feels
No.
like it's a lot of pain.
The reason
Like
for that was that you may have a fragment that's used in both a query and a subscription, and you want to defer that in the query and also include that fragment in the same description, and it would throw a runtime error if was set to true, but you could disable it by
so
variable.
are you saying that you are reusing the fragment between a query and a subscription?
No, in fact, I'm doing the opposite. My UI component is tied to that fragment, and I'm rendering that UI component for this query.
Okay.
Then later on, subscribing to changes, which in
Yeah.
turn re-renders the component.
Kind of. I suspect it's going to be complex to implement. I mean,
I
because
don't think so. Well,
can you use variables in the if parameter? Like, do you need to check
yes.
the runtime value of the variables?
Not you cannot check the runtime values of the variable in validation because
Yeah.
we allow validation to happen, when the queries are when your trusted documents are persisted. When we get
Right.
to the execution algorithm, you'll see there's a check in there where if we're in a subscription and there's a defer and there's an if, and the if is set to true, throw a runtime error and an execution error to use the right terms.
So it's something that is in a document that we cannot detect at build time.
Right. There's a couple of cases like this, both in defer and stream and outside. Like also we have the check for this came up was like, could we validate that initial count is a positive number? And you can if it's a variable. So it's the same thing if there is an execution error if it is. Same thing about the unique labels. In that case, I think we decided that you can't use variables at all because we didn't have a use case for it.
Yeah, I like this. But okay, yeah, fair enough. Actually, oh, maybe not. Like, could we disallow it in the first draft and add it later on if people are asking for it? Like, once
That's
you, yeah, sorry.
that pattern of just reusing the components is just something that I'm already using like
Okay.
in my own code, and it's necessary, especially with Relay or another framework where you're sharing the fragments, especially with mutations. Relay encourages you to take the UI components you want to re-render from your mutation and stick them in the.
Fair enough. Sounds good. We will have to do all of this in Apollo Kotlin. I was looking at all the validation. We just do the first section, I think. So that's good. I will create an issue for us to do that in Apollo Kotlin, and maybe while we implement it, we will find some other stuff. And if not, good.
Do you guys want to spend a little more time reviewing?
As far as I'm concerned, I think I need to like actually code this stuff. So the next step is for us to implement it. I don't think anything blocking. If it can be implemented and if it's working, then it's good for me.
Rob, I don't remember us forbidding the defer and stream or requiring that the defer and stream be turned off explicitly in mutation and subscription operations. Can you remind me of the context?
Um,
I think with subscriptions it was because we didn't
yeah,
quite
not for
work out what
mutation.
the
That's right.
rules. Oh, sorry, yeah, if I misread. Yeah, so for subscriptions, we didn't quite figure out what the rules should be, like whether it's okay for them to come after the next event payload, whether we're delaying and queuing the payloads, that kind of thing. So this is just a case of syntactically allowing them to be present because we might need them on co-located fragments, whilst also requiring via a variable that they're disabled because they're inside of a subscription. Is that essentially it?
Yes.
Okay.
That's so it's not allowed on the root field of subscriptions or mutations, and it's not allowed anywhere inside of subscription. That's the next rule used on valid operations. And that's the one where we check the runtime value and throw an execution error.
I I do not like this. This feels wrong. Why does it feel wrong? It feels wrong because now any query that uses that component has to have a new variable called like $is subscription, which must always be given the variable value of false, for example. Which just feels that just feels wrong. It feels really messy. I understand why we're doing it. I don't like it. We've discussed this before though. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to remember if there was uh feels like there should be a better way of doing this. We could forbid it, but we don't because if we do, then you suddenly can't use anything that has a stream in it. You can no longer use in a subscription. Maybe that's better. For now, I would argue that that is better. A better validation rule for now would be just forbidding the use of stream for fragments that can appear in a subscription. Is that gonna like break use cases that you already know of?
I think so because I mean this way it like you start in a place where you're using a fragment on a query and everything's working. Now you want to use it on a subscription. Yes, you have to go back and fix the query. But with the other rule, it just makes it not possible to get out of that. Like you just can't do it. You're gonna have to go and redefine another fragment or something. And that will fall out of sync with what you need.
Ah, okay. So there's a few things that I don't like about this. I'm trying to work out other alternatives, and one that came to my mind was like, what if we were to use fragment arguments? Would that help? Because then we can localize the parameter. But we would still need to then feed that, like essentially back up the tree. When you call that fragment, you'd need to know whether you're calling it with true or false. Um, and if that also was a variable, you'd need to plumb that all the way through, and you end up getting rid of the whole local reasoning because suddenly you are doing the thing throughout the whole tree. But we're getting rid of the local reasoning anyway by essentially using a global variable in this position, which I'm not super keen on. Um, this is a tough one. I'm gonna have to ponder on this. This is this is unpleasant. It might be that what we have here is the best trade-off, and I'm sure that is essentially what it is from previous discussions, but there's something about it that strikes me that we should be able to find a better solution to this, but I can't work out what it is off the top of my head. How do you feel about it? Like, does it feel wrong to you as well?
It, I mean, I agree that it's not ideal, but like the ideal solution is to support defer and stream on subscriptions. And when we do, then we wouldn't need this rule anymore.
Interesting. But if we were to forbid stream and defer on subscriptions, we could also solve that the same way by implementing stream and defer on subscriptions. And it would be, I think, cleaner. So the question is, are we happy ruling out that use case in the short term, or are we happy requiring that people add a weird variable in order to do it? Basically, do we forbid it or do we allow it but with an ugly workaround? Yeah, it's a hard.
It's cleaner for us, but it makes it's like it changes the option for the end user. It makes it changes it for them from being ugly to being impossible.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that being a good description of the problem. But I'd still feel that maybe impossible is better. Um, I need to see more use cases of it. Where would you have something that supports street like to okay, in my opinion, when you have a subscription, your subscription operation should be generally really small. So whereas with query operations, where you would like use fragment spreads all over the place, nested component trees and such, for a subscription operation, I generally recommend that it is basically as small as you can possibly get away with, um, because you don't want to you don't want that to take a long time because the next event needs to come through really rapidly thereafter. You don't want to hold up that event queue essentially. And adding stream and defer on top just makes that more complicated. I'm I'm tempted to say the alternative solution to this is we just instruct all GraphQL engines to ignore stream and defer on subscriptions. Just pretend they're not there.
Yeah, I put in the chat. There's a discussion link from 3 years ago where we discussed this. You had the same suggestion. I didn't read through the whole thing yet, but my my code base, we're not using subscriptions like that. One example, like it's an e-commerce site, you looking at your order page, and we just have a very low granularity event that's like anything about this order has been updated, it's been confirmed, or it's a negotiation, and you have a counteroffer, and it's just one subscription for the whole thing, and it just re-renders that whole component, which is very large.
Yeah, so it's more of a
So
like live query style almost.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, Yeah. I think personally I think that that kind of thing is not an ideal practice. I mean it's convenient for the developer, and if you know that the event throughput of that is going to be low enough, then it's okay. But if it's, for example, like a social media site and you've got like new posts coming in and you want to pull down, for example, the list of likes or the list of reactions or whatever, um, it's generally better to like handle each of those things smaller and more granular, because that stream of events can come through at quite a rapid pace, and waiting for like a whole massive like reselect on a larger object can actually cause that event stream to like build up to yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm, okay. So the main issue, what do you think it should do, like long term, like in 10 years time, what should Stream do in a subscription?
I think that we should have a way of have some kind of protocol around how we're sending the events, sending the deferred uh or streamed updates through the connection, and a way of multiplexing. We've talked about like multiplexing is desirable. We don't want it to hold up future events. So I don't know. I could see you wanting to multiplex it. I could see you wanting to cancel the other updates once the next event comes in. But I do think there's value in having defer and stream inside of subscription operations.
Yeah, for very low frequency subscriptions, it's not a big deal to have a big
Right.
operation. And yeah, for those, having then rendering the like, oh, something's just happened. Hang on, I'm just loading the media for you. Okay, here's the video, oh, here's the posts. That makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, yeah. Okay. So I think long term we would do muxing, as you say. It would then be, if we do muxing, then what we're basically saying is that we require the client to support it, even if it's like, eight different operation or eight different events all being processed in parallel with all their different deferred things, which is best. Because now that it's up to the server can enqueue them, um, can serialize them if it wants to. Like the server is allowed to, so long as the main thing is making sure that the client can handle it. So the reason that we need this validation rule at the moment is because we don't want to we don't want to have the client get confused in future when the
Yes.
multiplexing comes in.
Yes. It would be a breaking change to have the same query that has defer stream that's getting the same subscription operation that has defer stream that's getting silently dropped. Then you upgrade your server, new spec, and it breaks the client.
I concur. I think I'm leaning towards multiplexing being the right approach. And then it's down to the server to decide whether it wants to serialize or not, because it can make that decision. That would still be spec allowable, right? Where you have an event and you then process all of its streamed and deferred payloads until it's done before you then start processing the next event. You are allowed to do that. That would
Yeah.
be within the spec. So it just would require that the client supports the larger form, the more complex form. Um, and I think that's okay. So I think what I'm leaning towards is how much effort is it to actually implement that? And my gut is telling me that it's actually not huge. It's a bit weird because we don't really have muxing of streams at the moment. Um, but it is like every execution already can produce a stream now because of incremental delivery, like when you run a query. Um, so now every subscription event effectively gets a substream that gets multiplexed into the mainstream. So the main challenge would be that you would need to know which. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think the only thing that would really change is we've said that there's this what's the word? Like a defer identifier. What do we call that? Like the incremental ID.
Yeah. It's just the ID field on the
Yeah.
header on the.
Yeah, so that thing would need to increase throughout that same subscription operation. And so each event payload would now be an increment. I forget what we called it, but it will be an incremental payload with a pending as well and a has next true. The has next false though would be weird because oh, that's interesting because it's not the end of the actual stream, it's the end of that particular. Oh, that is uh we definitely need to think about this more because even just the has next that we've got at the moment might be painting us into a corner when it comes to doing the multiplexing down the road. I think we're quite close, honestly, to having it working. Um, maybe with a subscription, you just don't need the has next. Yeah, I don't think you need it.
Are you saying that you think we should go back to allowing subscriptions and block on the rest of the different stream on that?
I'm worried that that might be what I'm saying, yes, but also I think that it might not be actually hugely complex because we've already got all the machinery, right? All the machinery is already there. It's just like figuring out what that final part of the protocol is there.
Yeah, I disagree on that.
That's fair enough. You're a lot deeper in the weeds than I am.
I don't think the has next paints us into a corner. I still think it's useful to know that your current stream ended. I was thinking something like there's a whole nother field when it's a stream that says like this is like the ID for the whole event, and that gets passed through the whole thing. So that once you get a new one, you know whether the IDs or not, we make them global to the event or to the whole stream. Could go either way, but I feel like it should be something else. Because you have to know that like you've gotten a initial incremental result and not an update result.
But the initial one will always have pending. So it already has pending telling you that it's an initial one.
They could all have pending. The initial one has data as a top level.
Are you thinking from the terms of like a type discriminator, just from like a type safety point of view, or like, I mean, the initial payload is the initial payload, right? Like it's just the first one you receive.
Yeah.
So you can look at that and see if it has pending. If it doesn't have pending, it's a traditional one, right?
What do you mean by traditional one?
Like just a regular data and errors with no incremental. Sorry, it's late. I think I'm missing something here. So forget that for now. I'll have another think. I need to remind myself why Hasnext even exists. But what I was essentially saying, I think, is that I'm not sure that we need Hasnext within a subscription. I wasn't saying that we don't require it in other positions, though I will need to remind myself why we require it. But I think on a subscription, there's always another thing coming. So we don't really need the has next. We just need to know when a particular operation is completed, when an event is completed. Um, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like on a subscription, an event would have data and could have pending, but also a follow-up one can have data and pending as well. Right, I see. I see. Yeah, I see the problem. Yeah. Okay. I need to think about this more. I can't do this live.
I'm pretty strongly opposed to adding subscriptions back in and blocking on that. Um, I I I just think that I think there's a lot of questions that we'd have to figure out. And I think the value for them is worth it, but still pretty low compared to getting something out for queries and mutations.
Yeah, which
So
is why
I just don't want to distract from that. I mean, that's the conversation that came up whenever it was in that discussion that I posted.
it's why I'm leaning towards the like just don't allow them because that's a really simple rule. This variable rule is a bit like weird and like adding it to the spec for a bit and then removing it again is also a bit strange, but like I do. Yeah, it's enabling a thing. It's an ugly workaround to enable a thing that some people might want in the short term until we solve the bigger problem. And then the motivation to solve the bigger problem is then we get to get rid of the ugly thing, which we can do safely. Which we can do safely because the client would need to. Well, now a client wouldn't know that it needs to do that, but a server would reject the request on validation. Hang on. Oh God, I've got so many tabs open. Um, oh, I'm just going to open the link again. Okay, so you can't do this. You literally cannot do this. It's not allowed. In section 5, you cannot use variable values. No, I
I'm
see.
not.
No, I see
Yeah.
what you're doing. Yep, you're saying it must be a variable or it must be the Boolean value false. And then I assume that then during execution, there will also be a check to say that the value
Yes.
must be false. Okay, yeah, no, that is allowed. I apologize. Um, okay, yeah. All right. I think this is something we should bring to the primary working group, just to basically say this is a workaround. It's the only one that we have right now. This is probably the more like ev this is the
We did bring it to the working group.
oh, did we?
Yes. I'll send it to you on Discord so we have so you have it. But yeah, I wrote a discussion. There's all the options we discussed at the working group. That's what we decided to have this validation rule and have it work the way it does with
Okay.
the field error.
Yeah, that seems good. I'm glad it's been discussed, and if that's what the working group are happy with, I think it's okay. It's essentially a temporary workaround until we solve incremental oversubscriptions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm gonna just file what I've done as a comment on this. Broadly, I got hung up on that for a little while. Um, just a little bit of reformatting, really. Other than that one, everything seems reasonable. Um, we in the text that I wrote in my comments, I've said things like let the what did I say? Let field be the field to which the directive is applied. But during validation, we don't technically know that the directive has been applied to a field, even though it's a field directive. Like it may have been applied to another directive or some other weird location. So technically, this should have handling code like in there that says if field doesn't exist, then whatever, skip. Because one of the key rules with validation is that only each problem that you have should only be raised by one validation rule. So you applying a stream directive to the operation, that should not fire an issue from this one. It should fire an issue from the directives are only applied to the places that they're allowed to be applied to, rule, whatever that one is. So basically what I'm saying is my text here is not quite sufficient, but it's close.
That's for the
For the defer and stream directives are used on valid root field. The same kind of applies to what the text you already had, because you said, for example, the parent type of directive. But if, for example, a directive is applied on an argument, that doesn't really have any meaning.
okay.
So it needs to, like, there needs to be essentially not an assertion, definitely not an assertion, because an assertion would throw. There just needs to be a, if the directive is not applied on a field, then, return, don't do anything. There'll be
Okay.
examples in other
Got it.
things, but like, yeah, essentially we need to check that, not throw an error,
Okay.
and only continue with the validation if it makes sense. Yeah, other than that, what I read all looks really good. Really, I think we've got all the rules that we need here.
Okay. Um, yeah, just about the subscription thing. I don't want to start the discussion again when we already had a
Yeah,
conclusion
no.
back then. And that's why I made one of these discussion topics in that repo for everything that we brought up, because I knew that I needed to refer to it just to remember what we decided on.
But you were saying before that we've brought it to the primary working group, right? Not just the stream and defer working group.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. Um, you in the right near the end of this, you reference AST node, and I don't think that that's really something that we reference in the spec. Do we?
I have to double check.
No, we do. Directives are in valid locations. Let adjacent be the AST node the directive affects. It's one single location in the entire specification where we use that phrase. Wow. I didn't even know we used that phrase. I didn't even think we used the term AST in the spec. We do. We use it in section B, the lexical and syntactic grammar. Interesting. Well, it's got precedent, so I'll allow it. I was just looking for, inconsistencies versus the spec itself. I think you can simplify
Okay.
these, by the way, just following what I did before. Like for every at stream directive in the document, I think would be fine.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Rob. Good work as always. We will get this. We will get this over the line.
Yeah. And did you leave a comment about the other thing about the adding a new validation rule about implements on the root types?
I did not know. I don't think that that should be done as part of this at all. I think and I think you should just, for this, you should just assume that we have that rule. So you should just stick with the logic that you currently have, which is essentially parent type.
Yeah.
The parent type of the fragment. I think the spec calls it like the target type in some places. So it might be that you want to use that phrase. Um, but yeah,
Okay. Well, I'll write that rule and I'll open it up against the main spec branch and see how everyone feels about that at the next primary working group.
I think it warrants discussion. And yeah, if we can get it merged, I think it's going to simplify life. But like, surely someone will know someone who's done something weird if someone has done that, because it's the kind of thing that someone I'm sure would be like, I found this really neat trick that you can do with mutations where you add an interface because I'd love to know what
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Cheers, Rob.
See you. Bye.
Catch you next time. Bye.